They said I was losing my mind, that every misplaced item proved my decline. But what if the fog wasn't inside my head, but a carefully constructed illusion by those I trusted most? This is Helen's story, a woman who discovered her memory wasn't failing, it was being stolen. The keys were gone. Again. My hand, wrinkled and spotted with age, patted the empty surface of the oak entryway table. Nothing. I checked the small, decorative bowl Madison had insisted was the designated key spot. Also empty. A familiar, cold knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. "Looking for something, Helen?" Madison's voice, sweet as saccharin, floated in from the living room. She appeared in the doorway, a sleek silhouette in her yoga pants, holding a mug of herbal tea. Her brow was furrowed with that practiced look of concern I had come to dread. "My car keys, dear. I was sure I left them in the bowl last night." She sighed, a soft, pitying sound. "Oh, Helen, we talked about this, remember? Just last week. You thought you'd lost your reading glasses and they were in the refrigerator." She walked over and placed a cool hand on my arm. "It's okay. We'll find them." My son, Jason, emerged from his home office, peering over his laptop. "Everything all right. Just another memory lapse for Mom," Madison whispered, her voice conspiratorial. "The car keys this time." Jason's face softened into the same mask of patient worry. "Mom, we've been over this. You need to be more mindful. Maybe we should start leaving little sticky notes for you. Or, he exchanged a significant look with his wife. "It might be time to schedule that cognitive assessment with Dr. Evans, just to get a baseline, for peace of mind." Shame, hot and sharp, washed over me. A baseline, as if I were a failing machine. A faint, wispy memory tried to surface, the distinct feeling of the cold metal keys in my hand as I took off my coat last night, the familiar motion of slipping them into the right-hand pocket. I turned to the coat closet, my heart giving a hopeful flutter. "What are you doing now?" Jason asked, his tone weary. "I just thought maybe they're in my coat pocket." Madison intercepted me, gently guiding me away from the closet. "Honey, we already checked. Both of us did this morning, after you said you couldn't find your favorite mug. Don't you remember me asking you?" I didn't remember her asking. But the two of them stood there, a united front of certainty, their faces reflecting a reality so solid it made my own recollections feel like smoke. The fog was thick today. It had been rolling in thicker and thicker these past 3 years, ever since my Robert passed and they moved in to take care of me. In that moment, standing in my own hallway, I believed them. I believed I was broken. The house was blessedly silent. Jason and Madison had left for a wellness retreat in the wine country, a 3-day affair that left me entirely to myself. Rain pattered against the window panes, a gentle, rhythmic sound that seemed to wash the world clean. It was on the second day, a dreary Tuesday, that I felt a sudden urge to tackle the attic. It was a space I'd avoided for years, a repository of dust and memories, many of them belonging to Robert. But today, the silence of the house felt less like emptiness and more like an opportunity. Upstairs, the air was thick with the scent of old paper and cedar. I pulled the string for the single bare bulb, casting a weak yellow light over stacks of boxes and shrouded furniture. In a far corner, beneath a moth-eaten wool blanket, sat my old steamer trunk. I hadn't opened it in at least a decade. My fingers fumbled with the rusty latches, which finally gave way with a protesting groan. Inside, nestled amongst photo albums and my wedding dress, were my diaries. A whole life stacked in leather-bound and spiral notebook volumes. I picked one from the middle, its blue cover soft with age. The date on the first page was April 12th, 1998. My handwriting was a confident, looping script, so different from the shaky scrawl I now used for grocery lists. I sat on the dusty floorboards and began to read. And the woman who emerged from those pages was a stranger to me. She was sharp. She was funny. She meticulously detailed her plans for the rose garden, complete with diagrams and notes on soil acidity. She wrote a scathing, witty review of a local play she'd seen with friends. She chronicled a spirited argument with Robert about politics, laying out her points with a clarity and passion I hadn't felt in years. She was a whole person, vibrant and engaged with the world. I grabbed another volume, this one from just 4 years ago, a few months before Robert's final illness. The entry described a trip to the farmer's market. Found the most beautiful heirloom tomatoes, I had written. Jason and Madison came for dinner, made Robert's favorite lasagna. Em said I used too much oregano again, but I know for a fact Robert's recipe calls for a full tablespoon. I showed her the recipe card. She just laughed and said I must be misremembering. A jolt went through me, so powerful it was like an electric shock. I remembered that day. I remembered holding the grease-stained recipe card, my own mother's handwriting on it, and Madison waving it away with a dismissive little gesture. They had been doing it even then. The fog in my mind began to recede, burned away by the bright, clear light of my own recorded past. It wasn't a slow, creeping decline into senility. It was a calculated, insidious erosion. I closed the diary, the leather cool against my trembling hands. A single, terrifying, and utterly liberating thought echoed in the silent attic. It wasn't me. It has always been them. When Jason and Madison returned, tanned and self-satisfied, they found me quietly reading in the garden. I smiled at them, a serene, placid smile they hadn't seen in years. They mistook it for docility. "See," Madison whispered to Jason later that evening, not realizing I was in the next room. That little break did her a world of good. She seems much calmer. I was calm, but it was the calm of a hunter in a blind, not a lamb in a field. The next day, I took a bus downtown, a small act of defiance, and walked into an electronics store. With a portion of my pension, money they believed I mostly spent on knitting supplies, I purchased the smallest digital voice recorder they had. It was no bigger than my thumb. The education it provided was immediate and horrifying. I activated it in my apron pocket during meals or left it on the end table, where it looked like an ordinary USB stick. The recordings confirmed everything my diaries had suggested. "I put her blood pressure medication back in the Sunday slot," I heard Madison say one afternoon. "She took it this morning, but if she takes it again, she'll feel dizzy and confused. It'll just reinforce to Dr. Evans that she can't manage her own prescriptions." "Good thinking," Jason's voice replied. "Did you get the paperwork from the lawyer? The one for the power of attorney. We need to get her to sign it when she's having one of her foggy days." Listening to their casual cruelty in the solitude of my bedroom was like pressing a shard of glass into my own heart. But the pain didn't break me. It forged me. While they plotted my cognitive and financial demise, I plotted my escape. I needed an anchor in the real world, a place where I wasn't a patient to be managed. I found it in the polished wood floors of the community center's ballroom. I had signed up for a seniors' social dance class. On the first day, I was partnered with a man named Javier. He was a retired carpenter in his late 60s, a Cuban immigrant with eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled and a laugh that seemed to start in his shoes. He was all life and energy. As he led me through a clumsy waltz, I kept apologizing for my missteps. He just held my hand a little firmer. "Nonsense, Helen," he said, his voice warm with a faint accent. "Your rhythm is perfect. You just forgot you have it. Let the music remind you." For the first time in years, a man looked at me and saw not a burden, but a partner. The respect in his gaze was a balm on my wounded soul. A week later, armed with hours of recordings and a budding sense of self-worth, I set my trap. I found Jason and Madison in the living room, reviewing bank statements. Mine, I noted with a cold fury. I took a deep breath, summoning the image of the frail, confused woman they wanted me to be. "Jason, Madison," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "I've been thinking about what you said, about my memory." They both looked up, their expressions instantly shifting to ones of deep, feigned concern. "I think you're right. I'm scared. I think it would be a good idea to see a professional, together. A family therapist, maybe, to help us all cope." The look that passed between them was one of pure, unadulterated triumph. "Oh, Helen," Madison cooed, rushing to my side. "That is the bravest, most sensible thing you could do. We are so proud of you for admitting you need help." Jason nodded, the picture of a dutiful son. "Of course, Mom. We'll book an appointment with the best. Whatever it takes to make sure you're safe and sound." They thought they were leading me to the slaughter. They had no idea I was the one holding the leash. Dr. Susan Wexler's office was decorated in calming shades of blue and gray. It was a serene space, designed to foster trust and open communication. It was about to become a courtroom. We sat on a plush sofa, me in the middle, Jason and Madison flanking me like two well-dressed wardens. Dr. Wexler, a woman with kind eyes and a sharp, intelligent face, smiled at us. "So, Helen, Jason tells me you've been concerned about some memory issues. It's very brave of you to initiate this session." That was their opening. Madison began, her voice a symphony of sorrowful concern. "It's been getting progressively worse, doctor. Last month, she left the stove on all night, and she's constantly losing things, important things. Her keys, her wallet. We're worried she's becoming a danger to herself." Jason picked up the thread seamlessly. "We love her more than anything. That's why we moved in. But it's a lot to manage. We have to supervise her medication, handle all the finances. We're just trying to figure out the next steps for her own good. We think a more structured environment might be necessary soon." He squeezed my shoulder, a gesture that was meant to look affectionate but felt like a brand. They painted a masterful picture of a woman fading into the mists of dementia, and of two selfless children sacrificing their lives to care for her. I let them talk for a full 20 minutes. I listened as they spun their web of lies, each word a confirmation, each sigh of frustration another piece of evidence. I remained silent, my hands folded in my lap, my expression one of mild, vacant confusion. I played the part they had written for me one last time. When they finally fell silent, looking at Dr. Wexler for validation, the therapist turned her kind eyes to me. "Helen, what are your thoughts on all this? Does this sound right to you?" I took a slow, deep breath. The fog was gone. The air was crystal clear. "Yes," I said, my voice steady and clear, devoid of the tremor I had feigned for weeks. "It's true that I have been deeply confused about my own mind." I turned to look at Jason, then Madison. Their faces held smug, expectant smiles. But I've recently come to understand the source of my confusion. I reached into my large handbag, the one they always teased me about, calling it my bag of mysteries. But instead of pulling out a stray tissue or an old mint, my fingers closed around the small, hard shape of the digital recorder. I placed it on the polished coffee table between us. "Doctor, before we discuss a structured environment for me, I'd like to offer some context." I pressed play. The first voice to fill the silent, serene office was Madison's, sharp and conspiratorial. "If she takes it again, she'll feel dizzy and confused. It'll just reinforce to Dr. Evans that she can't manage her own prescriptions." Jason's voice followed. "Did you get the paperwork from the lawyer? The one for the power of attorney. We need to get her to sign it when she's having one of her foggy days." I let it play, clip after clip, them hiding my keys, them discussing how to convince me the roof was leaking so they could use my savings for a new car, them mocking my grief over Robert, them talking about me as if I were not a person, but an obstacle, a troublesome piece of property whose assets needed to be managed. Jason's face drained of color. He looked as though he'd been punched in the gut. Madison's jaw went slack, her eyes wide with a horror that had nothing to do with concern for me and everything to do with being caught. She opened her mouth, then closed it, making a small, fish-like gasp. I looked at Dr. Wexler. The professional kindness in her eyes had been replaced by a cold, sharp shock, which was quickly hardening into professional fury. The serene blue room no longer felt calm. It felt like a cage, and for the first time, I wasn't the one inside it. The silence that followed the last recording was absolute, thick with unspoken accusations. Dr. Wexler slowly removed her glasses, polishing them with a cloth as she stared at Jason and Madison. Her voice, when she finally spoke, had lost all its therapeutic warmth. It was pure steel. "What I have just heard," she said, her words precise and cutting, "is a textbook case of elder abuse, specifically gaslighting and financial manipulation. This is not a family seeking help. This is a crime scene." Madison finally found her voice, a high-pitched, desperate squeak. That's taken out of context. She's tricking you. She's the manipulative one." Jason just sat there, utterly defeated, the blood having rushed back to his face in a tide of crimson shame. He couldn't even look at me. I stood up. "I believe this session is over," I announced calmly. "Thank you for your time, Dr. Wexler. You've been very illuminating." I picked up my recorder, dropped it back into my handbag, and walked out of the office without a backward glance, leaving the wreckage of their lies for the therapist to sift through. My next stop was a lawyer's office, a referral from a friend in my dance class. Within 48 hours, a uniformed sheriff's deputy served Jason and Madison with a temporary restraining order and a formal eviction notice. They were given 72 hours to vacate my property. The fallout was immediate and predictable. My phone, which had been silent for so long with genuine calls, began to explode. First came the rage. Voicemails from Jason, his voice thick with disbelief and fury. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. You're an ungrateful old woman." Then came the bargaining and the pathetic apologies from Madison, her texts dripping with false remorse. "Helen, please, we can talk about this. We were just stressed. We love you. We didn't mean any of it. Don't do this to your family." Finally came the weaponized pity. "Mom, what will you do without us? Who will take care of you? You need us." I listened to the first few. Then, with a steady hand and a heart that felt surprisingly light, I blocked both their numbers. I did it while sitting at my kitchen table, sipping tea from my favorite mug. The one they'd claimed I had broken a month ago, which I'd found carefully wrapped in a towel at the bottom of their laundry hamper. The house felt vast and empty after they left, but it was a clean, promising emptiness. It was a canvas, not a tomb. That weekend, Javier came over, not for a dance lesson, but to help me move furniture. As we pushed the heavy sofa they'd bought against a new wall, I looked up at the empty second floor. "Javier," I said, an idea blooming in my mind, bright and clear. "How would you feel about a shorter commute to your dance partner?" I explained the layout: 2 large bedrooms, a private bathroom, a shared kitchen but with his own designated shelves. I named a rental price that was more than fair. He stopped, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow. He looked around the spacious, sunlit living room, then at me. A slow, wide grin spread across his face. "Helen," he said, his eyes twinkling, "I think I would like that very much." 6 months later, the silence in my home has been replaced by sound. Not the sound of whispered conspiracies or feigned concern, but the vibrant, joyful rhythms of a salsa beat. The heavy, oppressive furniture Jason and Madison favored is gone, sold to a consignment shop. The money funded a plane ticket and a deposit on a small, charming hotel in the French Quarter of New Orleans, a trip Javier and I are taking next month. My house breathes again. In the mornings, the air smells of strong Cuban coffee mingling with the lavender from my garden. Javier, true to his carpenter roots, has fixed the squeaky floorboard in the hall, rehung the kitchen cabinets so I can actually reach the top shelf, and his laughter is now as much a part of the house's structure as the wooden beams. We practice our cha-cha in the living room, the afternoon sun streaming through windows that are no longer filmed with grime and neglect. I still have my diaries, but I don't need to read them anymore to know who I am. I am Helen. I am a gardener, a dancer, a friend, a traveler. I am a woman who is learning to hit a backhand in tennis at 69 years old. I am a woman who owns her own home, and more importantly, her own mind. Sometimes, a flicker of the past will surface. A letter from a family friend asking why I was so cruel to poor Jason and Madison. A pang of sadness when I see a mother and son laughing together at the grocery store. But the pain is no longer a gaping wound. It's a thin, silvery scar, a reminder of a battle I fought and won. The grief for the son I thought I had has been replaced by a quiet, distant pity for the man he chose to be. My new life isn't about revenge. It's about reclamation. It's about the simple, profound joy of choosing what to have for dinner without it becoming a referendum on my competence. It's the freedom of knowing that when I misplace my keys now, and I still do, sometimes, I can just laugh, call out, "Javier, have you seen my keys?" And hear his cheerful reply from the garden, "Check the pocket of your coat, mi amiga. It's always the first place you look." And we both laugh, because the fog has lifted for good, and all that remains is the sunshine. Thank you for listening to my story. It's not always easy to draw a line, especially with family, but your peace and your dignity are worth more than anything. If you've ever felt lost in a fog that someone else created, I hope you know there is a way out. Be brave enough to find your own voice, even if you have to find it in the pages of an old diary.